ultimately I need to be clear on what it is that I can produce and how much value I can actually give to somebody. And then when you've made a promise, you make sure you do everything you possibly can to be able to meet or exceed their expectations.
All right, well, welcome to Fractional Firepower Podcast. Today I have with me my guest, Rob Lothian. He's the founder and CEO of Lothian Industries, and with over 20 years experience developing and customizing entertainment venues, Rob leads Lothian Industries and partners with developers, investors, and other industries to design, install, and optimize high-margin entertainment and attraction venues. So welcome to the show, Rob.
Thank you very much, Kyle.
So today we're going to be talking about partnerships, which is a critical component to many, many businesses. And you've got a lot of experience with partnerships. And I think my audience would really appreciate your insights and your experience with regards to partnerships. So why don't we start by talking about why you find that partnerships are so important for your business to begin with?
Well, I think of just about anybody, you need to be able to realize what your strengths are and how other people can, or other companies, for that matter, can complement what it is that you're actually trying to give to your client. And, in some smaller businesses, perhaps you've got a very niche market and you don't need any partnerships. But for myself, there is a lot of moving parts I'm not an absolute expert at every single part of it. So having partnerships is essential, making sure that things are done smoothly and not all put on myself. So that's the reason for why I've gone after that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense, right? You can't be experts at everything, right? So why don't you name a couple, maybe a key partnership that you've worked with that has a big impact on your business? Let's talk a little bit about them.
Sure. SPI Global is a company that's based out of Sweden, and they build a number of different active attractions. They're part of a much larger global leisure group that does everything from theme parks to water parks to, just about every venue you can imagine. Even adult entertainment with bowling venues and other such things. There are a number of other projects that are all starting to come up that are definitely more adult oriented, but definitely very active, and it's getting to be a very, very popular thing. So
right.
They're well suited for what it is that I'm doing.
Right. And how did it come to be that you manage them? Because obviously I imagine there's more than one partner that could do that type of work for you. So do you have like a set of criteria on how you actually choose your partners?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And frankly, I've pivoted my company to be able to partner with them because of their spectrum of what it is that they can do. I had a previous partner that was a very good partner and well respected in the industry, but they ran into some issues with regards to insurance, and then all of a sudden, in a matter of an overnight, it was done. They couldn't do it because they couldn't look after the North American market anymore, and I was scrambling with $1 million worth of business in the sales system, and needed to be able to find somebody. Fortunately, again, I've been around for a long time. I've known of a lot of these other companies that are out there. They are definitely one of the better companies that are out there. So I reached out and had a discussion. They were very interested in having new partnerships in North America, and we started moving forward. So it changed my business. I had to change it to be able to go after a larger market, which is what they're looking for, and
right.
It's definitely for the better.
Wow, that's a big change. So you had a previous partnership, and due to insurance reasons that fell apart, and you had $1 million in the sales funnel. So that's a pretty interesting topic. I think that's something that other businesses may have gone through. So how did you navigate that scenario, knowing that you got $1 million in revenue, you're ready to move forward to some of the stuff, and all of a sudden, due to something completely seemingly out of your control, you got to
Yeah.
make a big pivot.
Absolutely, for sure. So after the panic subsides, you know, you just have to look at things on a little bit more of a minute level and just take small steps towards getting to where you need to be. So you really need to think about what's going to be most important, um, and and then make some key decisions immediately. You need to be very decisive about the decisions that you make, but you have to make sure that you're not making the wrong decisions. And then the other important one is that you need to be transparent with your clients.
Rob, you had a partner, things are going well, and you had a sudden change with insurance, and you had $1 million of revenue lost. That must have been a stressful situation. How did you navigate that issue when you feel like you've got all this new business coming in, and then all of a sudden it just is gone?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, that's for sure. And I really needed to really be very decisive on some of the different finding new partnerships. Fortunately, I've known of other companies that are around, and SPI was definitely one that was on my radar even before. So I quickly reached out to them, and they were interested in working the North American market. The timing actually worked out to be pretty good, and they were able to move forward. Now, that's not to say, initially, I actually had $2 million in the pipeline and managed to actually close only half of them. So these are some of the things. And part of that was because the timelines were being worked on with the first company, and then the timelines were getting too squished together, and I couldn't live up to the expectation from the client with the new company. And these are things that will just happen. So the next important thing is that you need to be clear with your client. You need to be transparent with your client to say, look, this is what's actually happened. I'm not going to try to hide anything. These are the new parameters that we need to work within. And is this going to be reasonable for you? I think that transparency is of the utmost, even if it's difficult to provide. Important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's very important. So what did some of those conversations look like? If you had a client that was ready to pull the trigger, get a project going, then all of a sudden you come back and say, hey, I don't have the capabilities. How did you navigate those conversations?
Well, first of all, it was never about I don't have those capabilities. It was more about saying that the partnership of the design company and development company that we were working with has now not being able to build this project. I have an alternative. However, this is going to be the new parameters. So it's always about trying to actually provide an alternative, not to say no, just to say this is what our alternative is. But realistically, these are the things that we're going to run into, and is that still acceptable to you?
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Sounds like you've got some great clients that were able to work through with you on that as well. So, from your just self-management, how did you manage emotions during a time like that, where obviously very stressful? Any entrepreneur that's starting a business and it takes money to grow, and you're getting pretty close to that, those deals, and they fall apart. How did you manage yourself and control your emotions and not panic in a situation like that?
Well, I've learned long ago that panic makes you make rash decisions and makes all kinds of problems that you end up compounding problems, or new problems start showing up if you're not thinking clearly. It would have been very easy for me not to say anything and then just provide a whole different design from another company, and just the bait and switch and move forward and just pray to see if that was the pray to see if it went well or not. And that's just my business. The foundation of my business is based around clarity and trust. And if I lose that, I lose everything. So
Right.
getting back to what you were saying is that I needed to be very decisive on what it is that I was doing. And if I was panicking in any way, you just would make wrong decisions. And you just got to narrow your vision and move forward.
Got it. No, that makes sense. So when you say you're being decisive, what were a couple of things that you had to look at that allowed you to, focus more objectively on solving the problem versus just panicking that your partnership all of a sudden is not there?
Well, vetting somebody very quickly, because I mean, just because they've been around for a long time doesn't necessarily mean that they have all the parts and pieces
Right.
that are necessary for working in North America. And quite frankly, this is a perfect example of a company that did exactly that. They had everything in place, and then all of a sudden, their insurance company got wind that they were starting to build something in North America, and they're like, "No, we don't want to do that anymore." And their insurance company is the one who shut the whole thing down. It wasn't even them.
Oh, wow.
So making sure that okay, so there's a good track record of a company that actually has really good clients. That's part of it, of course. Have they actually worked in North America before? And how and do they actually have all the parts that we need in order to be able to actually work in North America effectively, on a number of different levels, obviously insurance being one of them, but making sure that you actually have support as well in North America is going to be an important one.
Right.
And understanding where my own strength is actually going to fill in the blanks as well. So support is a big part of what it is that I do for them now.
Right, right. Oh, that's very interesting. So it wasn't even the previous partner that pulled out. It was actually an insurance thing. So something that's sounds like it's out of their control to a certain extent as well. So how did you manage that relationship with the partner pulling out? Because that must have not have been an easy conversation.
No, it was a very difficult one, and it wasn't only difficult on my end; it was very difficult on their end because I mean they're a very stand-up company as well, and quite frankly, they were very sheepish when something like this happened because that's not how they operate. But they were put into an impossible situation, and they couldn't just keep pushing forward without insurance and not telling me. So this is where those type of moral decisions come in. If that's important to you, the bait and switch is not a good process. They chose to actually be upfront, same as I did with my clients, and they just said, "Look, this is the new parameters, and either you can, find some other way, or we need to not work together." And that was just something that I couldn't do. It's not something that I was ever going to let happen with my clients, so I had to
Right,
find some other way.
right. So it sounds like it was somewhat of a collaborative approach that you took with your old partner to allow them to, help you kind of navigate some of the components here. Is that fair to say?
Well, I don't know about collaborative. I mean, they just put it on me, and I had to deal with it on my own. So they just like, well, that's what it is. So here you go. So I had to do it on my own, and they were helpful just with because my own website actually had a lot of language to do with our partnership and all this kind of stuff, and we were just about to go to the biggest trade show of the year, and all this kind of stuff. So there was a lot of changes that actually had to happen in a very short period of time,
Right.
and but the thing is that they were transparent with me. The moment they knew, they told me immediately, and that allowed me to make sound decisions. And that's the only thing that they could have possibly done, and that's the way I would expect it. So we're actually friends. I see them at trade shows and stuff like that, and I wish them all the best in their own. And same thing with us. They were more than happy to be able to help me out as well. And there has been actually some sort of lead exchanges and things like that, just to be able to help each other out. Because of course,
Awesome.
if they get a lead, they're not looking after North America, so they've been able to kindly give me some of that support anyway.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really great. So, when I think about it, if I was in your shoes, I would be certainly super frustrated in the situation, and
Oh.
there might be the desire to get mad at them or not treat them a certain way. But sounds like you didn't do that at all, and showed some grace, and they had some grace, showed that with you as well, and it turns out that that's benefiting both of you now with lead exchange.
Well, I mean, basically, what had happened is that I had a choice of either. I mean, I could have sued them for the amount that I lost because they had an agreement saying that they were going to do this and they were going to push forward.
Right.
And I mean, it would have been a nasty and ugly and very costly thing. In the end, I feel that we've maintained a relationship, and I've probably gained more than that $1 million that I lost because of the leads that they've given me. So it's worked out. It's just a matter of sort of leveraging things in ways that can help you.
Yeah, no, that's a very mature way to handle the situation, I think, right? I think your business potentially, you may have been worried about the whole thing being in jeopardy when that partnership broke down. So to handle it that way seems like a good decision. Have you had situations in the past where a partnership didn't work out and maybe it went down a different path and you learned from that and that's how you knew how to not go down that path again? Or what allowed you to be ahead of that and just so I guess mature with the way you dealt with that tough situation?
Well, I mean, for me, I mean, even in personal life, just sort of understanding the perspective has always been a very important one for me, right? And if somebody is actually doing something just because they're out to get you, that's one thing. But the perspective of understanding their perspective and the position that they were in, they weren't, trying to do anything malicious. They were in an impossible situation and they trying to manage it the best they could. The least I could do would be to try to find, okay, so let's just try to find value in how we can actually work this out so that it's amicable for both of us and we can move forward. So perspective is everything when it comes to something like that. You can be mad and stomp your feet and like throw dust in each other's faces and stuff like that. But I mean, what does it get you in the end? Ultimately,
Right.
You're looking for value. And if you can understand, see, value is measured in so many different ways. And if you can actually understand how something like this could potentially benefit you, at least, in the long run, then you need to look at it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Thinking long term, versus short term, right? And looking at the glass half full sort of mentality. And
Mhm.
that's great that you've been able to develop a amicable relationship with them and sharing leads, and they're sending you leads. And I'm sure at the time when you lost that partnership, it didn't feel like you were going to gain more out of it in the long run. So that's pretty cool that you're seeing the returns now after navigating that challenge.
Certainly, yeah.
So when you look at yourself now as an organization, and obviously these partnerships are very important for you, what are some of the things that you do on your end to make sure that you're actually also being a great partner to your partners?
Right. So, I mean, it's the same conversation that I would actually have with my clients as I do with my partners. I mean, ultimately, I need to be clear on what it is that I can produce and how much value I can actually give to somebody. And then when you've made a promise, you make sure you do everything you possibly can to be able to meet or exceed their expectations. Um, there is the occasional time where you can't. I mean, and this is the good example as to why that $1 million left is because simply I made a promise that I couldn't keep because of these other circumstances. So things can happen, and you need to be able to pivot and move and try to do the best you can and just and make no excuses for anything. You just move forward and you do the best you can. So the same thing with the partnerships. You need to be able to make sure that there's value on both ends, that you're you're gaining as much value as you're giving, so that is an even playing field on both sides. And whenever that's happening, you end up with really good collaborative work together.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Awesome. So, when you look at partnerships, there's a lot of different ways to structure them. How do you structure your partnerships? Is it like a revenue share, or how do you navigate? How do you determine what the right structure is for this type of partnership when they're obviously manufacturing and they're a big part of what you do, but you're a big part of what you do as well? How do you figure out how that should look for a company?
Well, there's a lot of components that actually go into something like that, especially when you're dealing with something that's international like that. So there's a lot of negotiating the contracts and the legalese of the whole thing. But I guess it depends on what the partner is or who the partner is. If you're talking specifically about manufacturers, then you have to figure out who's going to be responsible for what, and what happens in any given situation. If there is shortcomings, how do we deal with it? Who's to deal with it? Who's going to be on the hook for the shortcomings, and how to deal with it? And there needs to be clear expectation on both ends, so that when something happens, because inevitably something's going to happen at some point, that both of you know exactly what needs to be done and who needs to do it. And if you have a clear contract that's not all muddled up, then it makes decisions much easier.
Yeah, definitely. Getting everything out there up front basically is what you're saying, right? So I imagine you had to spend a lot of time thinking about worst case scenarios, so that you can kind of have those conversations on the front end. So that's clearly in your agreement with your partner, and just kind of forecasting what happens if, and spend a lot of time looking at those scenarios. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah, exactly. And when we're talking about, active attraction, so obviously liability is a big part of it. And where does liability fall? And who becomes liable for what parts? And how is it dealt with? So, and obviously in the United States in particular, and less so, but definitely in Canada as well, is that if some accident happens, like what happens, like how do you figure out exactly who's at fault, because there's been some crazy things that are it makes no sense that anybody really seems liable. It's just that somebody's mad and somebody wants to sue,
Right.
and of course in the States there's more than enough lawyers to be able to do that, so
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. What are some of the, any top lessons that you've had just working with partners that you could share with any of the viewers?
um sometimes the partnerships are more to do with your marketing partners, or your funding partners, or different types of partners. So like I said, I mean, and we've already sort of touched on it, is that you just need to be able to have clear indication on what it is, and everybody needs to be able to be gaining as much value as the next. I feel that if you have a good partner that really likes what it is that you're doing and is interested in what you're doing, they're usually very engaged at trying to create something, particularly in my industry, because there is. I find it funny because I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that are in business, and they typically have their business hat on. But when we decide to start getting into design, all of a sudden a different part of the personality comes out of these businessmen, and they've got all these grand ideas of coming up with stuff, and it's up to me to be able to shape the idea and make it so that it's feasible. So for me, it's taking that that initial conversation and then initial thought process, and then going to my partners and saying, okay, so what part is yours? What part is mine? How can we actually help in a variety of different ways, whether it be developing a business plan, or making sure that it is in fact feasible to be able to do, building budgets, providing funding options for them, and then developing something that is going to fall within the parameters that we've actually given. So this goes beyond just one partner. It goes, it has to deal with all these different levels of partners, and making sure that we're making the right decisions first, so that when it comes to design, it falls within a parameter so that there's not wasted time.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. A lot of moving parts there that you're navigating. Have you ever had sort of control challenges with, you have an idea and you're obviously in control of your business, but maybe you've had to navigate some different types of maybe egos or personalities where there's a bit of a control battle, so to speak, and you have to kind of delicately work your way through that to get the best outcome for your clients?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the eternal fight between designers and salespeople. The salespeople always want to sell something that's absolutely massive and out of this world, and the designer's saying, "No, we can only do this," and trying to find that in between. Working with designers, some designers that I've worked with in the past are more about trying to do things a little bit more cookie cutter and easier for development, and obviously doing something that has less risk, financial risk, because you don't want things to slip. But at the same time, if you're trying to design something that's innovative and fun and never been done before, sometimes you need to be able to take a little bit of risk, and you can mitigate that risk by just making sure that there's proper funding to be able to do it, proper time to be able to do it. But in doing that, you can end up with some pretty incredible stuff.
Right.
You also have to find the right designers to be able to be on board with creating something new.
Right. Yeah, no risk, no reward, I guess, right? And yeah, I know about dealing with salespeople for sure. I am one, so there's definitely that's not always easy, right? We sell everything and figure it out later, but sounds like what you're saying is you have to learn how to say no, right? And tell people that, hey, that's just not possible, but what might be possible is this, and then collaborating with designers and kind of air traffic controlling the conversation around salespeople, designers, yourself, and your client, and putting together the best possible project that will give the client the best outcome. So
yeah, absolutely. And if you've been in sales, obviously you know better than most people I've met that saying no doesn't always mean no. Saying no means maybe this might not be your best option, but if we take this road down here, it meets the value that you find, that you're looking for. So figuring out what that value stream is, there might be several roads to get to it, and you just got to find a different road to be able to get to that value.
Yeah, and I find in my experience that when you do say no to one part of it, you actually earn more credibility and you earn more trust, right? Because a lot of folks out there will say yes to everything, and that actually can come across as not authentic, right? Because not everything is possible, and that actually could damage your reputation or give off the perception that maybe you don't really know what you're talking about, because anything's possible, right? And when you say yes, when it's too good to be true, right? That's often a reality. Yeah. It's too good to be true. So.
Exactly. And oftentimes it's more of a no because. Yeah. No because of this, no because that's just not safe. You can't do that,
yeah.
Or whatever it is, like sometimes it's like, well, we can't do that because your budget is here and what you're asking for is here, like
totally.
There's a lot of different, you need to stay within the parameters that they're trying to give you. And if they're asking the moon, you need to be able to say no at a certain point, or at least change the parameters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like with those great partnerships and those, if you're open and candid on the front end, have clear communication, have clear expectations of what to expect. It gives you that opportunity. You can pivot a lot easier. The conversation sounds like it's much easier with your client and with your partner, so that you can really work collaboratively towards a common goal. So that's awesome. One of the other things I was just thinking about that I think would be valuable for the audience would be, how did you keep your business running during that? As an earlier stage organization, when you lost so much revenue, cash flow is always important in any business.
For sure.
How did you navigate a big blow like that and keep things chugging along?
Yeah, good question. Especially considering that I had to rebuild the website.
Yeah.
Which can sometimes be very challenging and not cheap.
Yeah.
I had some contingencies to begin with. That's built into many of my projects to make sure that this happens. I actually have a staged sales process. So the design and consultation is one first stage. So what allows me to be able to get some revenue up front, to be able to do some front end work, and then when the lion's share of the job is done afterwards, you already have a bit of revenue to be able to sort of carry forward and do that. So
right.
That's structuring things that way, it makes things infinitely easier for sure. Reducing risk on your payments as well is another one too. So making sure that your payment terms are in a way that you're not begging for 80% of your payment after everything has been done. Like that's just a mistake.
Right.
To make. Especially with custom projects and things like that. Know that not every project is going to be a project best suited for you, and don't be afraid to say no to clients that are pushing you to a point where that's uncomfortable. There are lots of clients that are out there that are well suited for what it is that you do. If you are a professional in your industry and if you trust what it is that you do, then you can charge for it. Don't be sheepish to do so.
Right. Wow, that's really, really great advice. I work with a lot of clients that are in various stages of their development, and it can definitely be in an earlier stage where we need to take everything, right? We need every deal. We need to build revenue. We need to build cash flow. But to your point, if you're not getting paid, till it's over, and you're spending money on inventory, that could have a really negative effect on business. I've worked with some clients where they had so much tied up in inventory that hadn't been paid for or sold that it almost ended the business. So I love that you're saying, hey, it's okay to say no. Sometimes not every client's a good fit for you, right? You have to be really diligent and looking at all those terms. Do you also work with your suppliers and partners to extend your terms so you have a little bit of a better window for when you actually have to pay for some of that product? Because that's something some of my other clients have looked at that's really made a big impact positively for their business as well.
Oh, no question about it, and particularly because oftentimes there are lags in timing. So for me, because of the manufacturing process often takes quite a bit of time, right? And then of course there's deliberation of a client wondering whether or not they're actually going to pull the trigger, and then they pull the trigger and they say that they're actually going to give you the deposit to begin with, but they don't get the deposit in another week or something like that, and then you turn around and you try to send it to Europe, and for whatever reason some sort of banking issue happens or whatever, and by the time it actually ends up in the hands of people, you could have eaten up a couple 3 weeks and stuff, which in the end could very much affect your performance in the very end. And of course, to what we were talking about before, you have something like that happen, and let's say you've got 20% upon completion, and they're just not happy with the fact that they decided that they were going to have a grand opening the day that you were supposed to be finished, and now you're not able to do that, and they had to cancel parties or cancel whatever, and then they put a dollar figure on that, and then they decide they're just going to take it right off the top. And you have no control over it. There's nothing you can do with that. So you need to be able to, first of all, make sure that there's enough time, making sure that your payment terms have some flexibility. so that you make sure that you have the cash in hand and the time to be able to give to your suppliers so that they can move forward. And don't compromise time, because again, you can get yourself in all kinds of trouble, and you just don't need it.
Yeah.
The cash is really it really is, so like your driving force. It's the whole reason why you're doing it. Is somebody's flashing cash in front of you, and you're like, you know what, I'll just take it and we'll just squash it.
Right.
It's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Sounds like with your experience, you've got discipline. You've learned, maybe made some mistakes in the past and learned from that, so you can know when to say no and when to walk away, when which partners and clients are the good ones versus the ones that are maybe not so good. Awesome.
Well, I am, from the very first conversation, setting timelines from the very first conversation. And that has been an absolute rule of mine from the very beginning.
Right.
You have to make sure that the client knows what your timelines are and knows what your budgets are going to be and what it is that you're working for. Otherwise, you're going to waste your time. If you're holding back on being afraid to tell them that something's going to cost you, $100,000, 200, 500, whatever it is, like $1,000, and you're just sheepish to throw that number at them, and then all of a sudden you get all this design work done. You're like, what do you mean your budget was $10,000?
Right, right, yeah.
You have to be clear on what the expectations are before you get any work done, and get that done in the first conversation.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Being clear up front, right? And I think that by doing so, you'll also vet out the wrong clients right away, right? Because you'll get a good sense if you're clear and you're not afraid and not ashamed, right? We talk about this a lot in sales. You got to be proud of what you have, and there's a lot of people out there that want what you have. But if, get it out there early. Don't be afraid to have those conversations, and it allows you to spend your time in a more educated fashion with really the better opportunities that align with what you're bringing. So that's awesome insight. Thanks, Rob.
You made a good point there too. You know what? You spend all this time trying to solve problems for all kinds of people, when really the only people that you should be solving problems for are maybe a fraction of those people.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
So, and the fraction of people that do take full advantage are going to be better off, because you have more time and effort for them.
Yeah, no, I love it. Makes 10 sense. Last thing I was just going to ask you about, and then we can wrap it up here, Rob. But what, people in your organization, how has that affected your relationships, and what have you learned about leadership in terms of other people in your organization, and how that directly ties into the strategic partnerships that you've built?
Sorry, say that again.
Your staff, the value of your staff, right? Yeah. Obviously, they're going to be a big component in the success of partnerships. So what have you learned just from a leadership standpoint, or just from hiring the right people, of how to get the right people into your company to sustain those partnerships?
Yeah. So, first of all, making sure that you actually have a good working model that everybody can follow. They need to be able to understand what their job is, and what the company's sort of mantra is going to be. They really need to know what the focus is and how they can be best value to what it is. And if they have the ability to be able to make decisions on their own, because they already know where the company is, and if I make this decision, it is going to help the company do this, then you have to give them the ability to be able to do that.
Right.
So hiring people that can make decisions and make sound decisions are important. Right. But then also communication is key as well, right? There's so many different ways that you can communicate with people, and sometimes it's just a small text, and other times it needs to be a little bit more clear, and having meetings and making sure that everybody's on the same page. So
right.
Yeah, communication is a big one for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, thank you so much. A lot of great insights, a lot of great advice from you. Thanks for joining the show, and I appreciate all your insight and experience working with partnerships.
My pleasure.